Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Rachel.
How are you?
I am doing, interestingly.
Oh.
I'm scared, actually.
Okay.
I've been locked in a room with no gravity, and I'm banging on the door, asking for help, but I'm afraid that there may be some kind of spooky mystery box on the other side, and you know how I feel about mystery boxes. Scared a lot of them. How about yourself?
I'm up for a new adventure.
You're up for a new adventure in the deep void of space?
Yeah.
Into the Expanse. Ooh.
Hey, one of these days I should try and convince you to do something that's not sci-fi.
No.
For this.
We pivot and do Desperate Housewives, finally, after being promising all of our listeners and patrons that we would do Desperate Housewives. We actually commit to doing Desperate Housewives.
Hey, we haven't got the time right now.
No, I cannot kill you today. I have Pilates.
No, we are too busy watching a show that neither of us have seen before here on the Yum Yum podcast, the only podcast
breaking fully with tradition now. Space Above and Beyond was a move in that direction because I hadn't seen it and you had. Though this particular episode Ryan has seen before.
Oh, let's just rip into it, Rachel. We here at the Yum Yum podcast like to talk about science fiction television. We've talked about Babylon 5 episodes. We're going through that at the moment. We have talked about Star Trek Discovery, Space Above and Beyond, and we have often we are rewatching those shows, but here The Expanse is something that has been on the to-do list. It has been something that has stalked us like a predator in each conversation we've had. No, because there have been people who have messaged us and been really surprised that we don't talk about The Expanse. We haven't really watched The Expanse. We haven't had that experience because it is one of those modern sci-fi shows that is held up in very high regard, and we're having to talk about Babylon 5, which has a lot of the foundation points for this series, and especially Space Above and Beyond, and we're talking about Star Trek Discovery, a series that we rip our hair out when it comes to them wasting potential for stories, and The Expanse is that thing that has been told to us many times. You should watch that if you want to see something that follows through on its promises and on its sci-fi-ness. And so we are Yum Yum because that amazing line of dialogue from Star Trek Discovery's second season finale, in which a character randomly out of nowhere said Yum Yum, and the most...
Well, it was a reply to a question.
It makes no sense, but the thing is, Yum Yum is an inherently sexual thing to say, and especially if you lick your lips before you say it, just like that character. And so with The Expanse, we don't know what the Yum Yum stuff will be for that, but I just want to ask you this. Maybe this will be it. Did you find anyone in this pilot episode, this first episode, to be Yum Yum? Somebody that you looked at or you felt and you went, Yum Yum? I find Miller Yum Yum. I think Thomas Shane's he's a handsome guy. He has that kind of lived-in experience. You just look at that face and you go, he's seen some shit, and I find that sexy.
I see the appeal. He's not it for me. I would pick Holden over Miller.
You're Holden girl, vroom vroom. I would love to hear the IMDb summary for this first episode of The Expanse. I don't even know what the title is, because when we shoved in our Blu-ray, it just has it as episode 1. Even though it has a title, they just called it episode 1. So what are we talking about?
Dulcinea.
Okay.
The asteroid belt near Saturn. James Holden and the crew of the ice freighter Canterbury, on its way to Ceres Station, investigate a distress call from an unknown derelict ship, the Scopuli.
That's a very quick fire synopsis, and I thank them for not getting into too much, because this is a pilot episode of a science fiction show. Even though it isn't 90 minutes long, it is a pilot episode of a science fiction show where there's many things to catch the audience up on. And so to give a proper rundown of our histories and experiences with The Expanse, Rachel touched on it briefly. I have seen the first 6 episodes of The Expanse when they originally came out, week to week. It was on Netflix here in Australia, and I watched it on my computer in the spare room that we had, and I just did not engage with the series. And it was not because of the quality of the show itself, but because of a certain mood and place in life I was at where I just was not vibing with it. Even though I could tell it was doing a lot of impressive things, there was some interesting character work, lots of beautiful images and sci-fi things that I love to dig my teeth into. There was just something about it that didn't grab me enough. And also, I was just in a certain headspace at the time where I wasn't giving the show the attention I think it needed. We went through this with Space Above and Beyond, where that's a series that demands a lot from its audience. And for a series from 1995, that was quite a lot. While 2016, most shows start from the very beginning saying, you have to pay attention to everything we're doing, okay? You have to make sure that you know that we've done this because it will pay off. You have to do the work to appreciate what we're doing. And I just wasn't vibing with it. So after 6 episodes, nothing in particular made me just dive off of it. I just stopped. I just stopped going to the place to watch it. I just stopped doing it. And it's just flown me by. I keep hearing massive praise for it, but I just never sat down to watch it. And then, hey, we have the podcast, and I've always wondered, should we do a show that neither of us have seen? And The Expanse was always at the top of that list because of that relationship we have with Star Trek Discovery, but also there are certain things that Babylon 5 and Space Above and Beyond have within them that I know are also in this show. Now, Rachel, The Expanse, what about you? Do you have any history, relationship, and or ideas of what this series has in it?
No. No, I don't. I'm going to embarrass myself and be honest. I didn't look at anything before you put it on the DVD because, like, we've been saying that we're going to start this for, like, a couple of weeks. And it's just one of those things of like, oh, that can wait. Then you put it in, and I was like, ooh, this looks really good. It has like chick floating in space, and I was like, oh, this looks surprisingly good.
Visually arresting image.
Yeah. Do you know why I thought that it looked so good?
No.
Well, it didn't match my expectations because some wires got crossed in my brain.
Oh, everyone, sit down. Rachel's going to tell us a tall tale about how she probably thought we were watching Gilmore Girls for some weird reason. I don't remember that episode of Gilmore Girls where Lorelai got launched into space. Admittedly, I haven't watched enough Gilmore Girls to tell. That episode where Rory spaced her mum. It was a wild. Season 7's a really crazy one because the showrunners weren't involved.
It's not fair.
It's not fair.
It's not fair.
You were a Trekkie?
I was not a Trekkie.
Oh, I do believe that denying you were a Trekkie is a violation of the Prime Directive.
Indubitably, Captain.
Well, in my head, for some reason, The Expanse went along with Lost in Space.
Yes.
But not the remake of Lost in Space.
What, the original? You thought this was a 1960s television series we were watching? No, Rachel, this is a modern show. This finished like a year or two ago, a couple years ago. Oh my lord!
I know, right?
So wait. Could you please tell us all what you thought this 1960s science fiction TV series called The Expanse is going to be? I'm gobsmacked, absolutely gobsmacked by this. I didn't know this. We've had conversations about The Expanse before we sat down to watch it.
I know.
In your brain, you know my story. When I was telling my story, Rachel was looking at me going, yeah, I've heard this before. Rachel thought I was sitting down week to week to watch a brand new episode of a 60s television series.
I forgot that it was week to week. I thought.
She thought, what?
I thought you were just pacing it out for yourself.
Of course.
I just remember. I was just like, yeah. Oh, that's Ryan's thing. That's something that he's doing. Because you were watching basically week to week the 1960s Batman at the same time.
I mean, it's a fair thing. It's a fair thing to think that. You know what? This is like the 1960s Batman. Holden is the Adam West figure. Miller is very much his Robin. They haven't met yet.
So
when you said, I thought it was like the Lost in Space show, I'm like, that makes sense. Like the new one, there's a lot of similarities. I can see that, but wowzers. So, it was quite a shock to you when the first image came on the screen and it was modern CG.
It's like, oh, they did a really good job for mastering this. You want to know how it finally kicked in that it wasn't.
When it was in 16 by 9?
No.
No, what was it? The CGI monster growls?
Nope.
What?
The Sci-Fi logo, that's why I announced you. I was like, oh, Sci-Fi. And I'm like, wait, this can't be that old.
It's on the Sci-Fi channel. I can't wait to cover a 60s show and tell you it's from yesterday. Rachel, we're going to watch this little thing. We're going to watch this little show from the 70s called Blake 7, but it's actually from yesterday. I'll tell her it's from yesterday. We're watching Blake 7, it's actually from 2018, and you'll be like, oh, that it's not. I just lie. I don't know if we'll ever recover from that. So this is our podcast, where for those who are new and keen to hear a conversation about The Expanse, where we know nothing, by the way. Like, I know pretty much nothing about The Expanse, and clearly you know nothing about it either. I'm aware that they're from some books.
I remembered a few things after, because we've watched a video that used The Expanse as a good example of translating novels.
So very little experience with this series. I haven't read the books. I'm aware they exist. I'm pretty sure, and I felt this from the pilot, and this will lead us straight into the world building and the lore that we are presented with, because this obviously does introduce us to characters and themes, but a lot of science fiction pilots are really emphasizing the world and how this all operates and the type of science fiction that we are inhabiting. And what I'm pretty sure is the case, the books came about from them wanting to create a role-playing game first, and they wanted to build out what that would be, and so it spirals out into what we are here today looking at, where it's so detailed and so about those little intricate pieces that go together. And so this episode is very much about, here is this series. This is what we're living in. I didn't get a great sense of who we were with in the world rather than the world itself. Now, Rachel, what did you think about the world building? And talk to us a bit about the pieces you've gathered from this.
My feeling all the way through was there's so much money on screen right now. And then, like, 3/4 of the way through, I was like, it is impossible that this was like a spec pilot that they did without knowing that they were going to get picked up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, there's no way that it would be like this if it was in that camp. And then a lot of their decisions made more sense to me because it has the confidence to not give you many answers, but to give you a lot of questions. And those questions do give you insight into the world. But it is very much about what you see, not what you are told, which is not an approach that pilots that haven't been greenlit get. Because they have to pose the questions and get you invested, whereas this has a self-assuredness that most pilots are lacking in, because they have to try and get producers to want to invest more money into it.
It has a visual approach to dispensing exposition. Obviously, there's lots of verbal exposition, but even the opening credits tells you everything you need to know, where we are seeing the evolution of man, how we broaden out into space as Earth itself is being consumed by the water. And then that is the great dramatic irony, is Earth has an abundance of water, too much to deal with, while the outer reaches of space, the belt, is struggling with water. It's a commodity. It is the haves and have-nots, but you really hit the nail on the head there with the money is on the screen, and we have seen pilots with the money on the screen. When we watched Farscape, for instance, that was a series that had a supreme amount of confidence out of the gate as well, because you could tell that they banked on this. They said, this is going to be a big deal, and here's the money on the screen, and so we can afford to have the visuals. And now, the problem...
And also, that has the length. Like, at least this is going to be a TV movie, so we're going to get a complete story.
Yeah.
Whereas this is a average length episode.
Well, that's the difference too, is why I relate this to Farscape. Farscape's one was only 45 minutes, that pilot. And it was, yes, it was. And it was short, it's quick, and punching got you to the point. While most of the genre has the TV movie length or the double-parter
Space
introductions. Space Above and Beyond, TNG, Babylon 5. They all have these long-ass pilots.
I'm just getting my wires crossed and embarrassing myself all through this episode.
And the world building here is done through a lot of those visuals. There were so many moments of transitions, just scene transitions, that gave me a deeper understanding of how the mechanics of things worked, rather than the moments of somebody outright telling me. Because if anything, I actually have a problem with sci-fi shows when they tell me so much information in the pilot, because I don't know. I mean, it's a part of the burden that you have to bear. You have to tell the audience what's going on, but at the same time, you're throwing a bunch of words and factions and groups and people and economics and oh, this is how spaceships work at them, and I'm just sitting there going, oh, okay, is Holden our main character? Is Miller? I don't know. But for a large part of it, I was really drawn to how they just told us the little things, like how Earth is flooding and how the waters are rising, and we saw the Statue of Liberty that had a wall around it.
Belters from Earthers.
And that Mars not being in this episode all that much said so much about Mars in itself, where they weren't present in this until the very end, but there was this air of secrecy and mystery, and all we really had to go off of was that exposition text at the beginning that said that Mars is a military thing. Like they're a military group. They've gained their liberty as that. And so when we do meet them at the very end, and they are a strike force, they are somebody who attacks, it gave me far more of an understanding than if you had a bunch of characters saying, oh, did you know that Mars is actually a militaristic group and that they are secretive and blah, 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 blah. It was the restraint that I really appreciated in this.
To them, we will always be slaves. That's all we are to the Earthers and Dusters. They built their solar system on our backs. Spit the blood of 1 million of our brothers, but in their eyes, we are not even human anymore.
I guess I like the way that they're bridging our technology that we have now with the future tech. And you can kind of see the sort of evolution that things might take. I like that they were just casually using like consumer grade drones around the place. I thought that was fun. I liked a lot of the little touches with the props as well, like the way that things have mostly stayed tactile. But there's still like other kinds of screens, and different places have different sort of things, like the phone tablet thing.
I loved how Miller's one was cracked. That was a great little detail.
Yeah.
Another thing that I thought was really great, the people who live in the more fancy, higher up end have the fake sky. They have like the televisual sky above them, and you see the bird try to fly up onto it. And I thought that was, again, a great piece of visual storytelling to hammer in on the themes of the haves and the have-nots, the higher-ups and the low-ups, the people who are rich and the people who are poor, the people who are struggling, the people who are thriving. That there was a wonderful demonstration of that. One of the things that I noticed you sit up in your seat at when we were watching it, and I don't know if you had it in your notes, was when they were in the train and they were just showing us like in the tunnels and how it goes through the actual terrain itself, and that this train also, they showed us a lovely little map that had, here's all this stuff. And us being nerds, that's the type of thing where you'd pause that and go, okay, I'll read that map.
Yeah. And the fact that it is structured very similar to the way that they represent the train maps of Tokyo. That's what I was noticing. The sort of, that's a very subtle way to allude to the global nature of it.
There was a blending of cultures that I really appreciated. There was multiple languages being spoken. There was a mixing of languages, as well as just people's clothing. You could tell that, oh, this person has a mixture of this culture and this culture, with that twinge of sci-fi-ness added on the top, as well as when we cut to Earth, deputy chairperson of the UN is this Indian woman, and she's wearing the full outfit. It's bright and colorful and luxurious, and she stands out in comparison to the rest of the things we've seen on that multiple levels of, she is vibrant, she's on Earth, but also she's a person of a drastically different culture than everyone else that we've been following. Everyone else who's just been kind of sad and grungy, and your white guys
classic
who
dystopian.
Your classic, yeah. And here's this rich Indian woman who's just having a bowl, being a bitch, and I can't wait to talk about her. But another piece of the world that I think is really key and very, very well captured without having to bang us over the head. You get that there's a powder keg here, that it's ready to go off.
You feel it. Like they tell you that at the start. Like it's on the edge of war.
There's just one spark to set it off.
Yeah. And you feel it. You feel that intensity. And
I liked another aspect of this, which was the casual brutality that was present. People lose their arm and then they'll just be bitching that they will have to get it regrown, or they'll get a robot arm, and
they want a robot arm.
And there's just, this is how horrible the world is. The racism, the bigotry, the disparity, and also just the brutality is all treated with a shrug from most of the people living in it. That is
it's
such
just a fact of life.
That's just a telling thing about the lore and the world building that is present in the pilot, is just they're on the precipice of war and nobody seems to care all that much because people are just trying to get by, or people want a bit of profit, or people want power. And that's my type of sci-fi jam.
We'll get to more of this, but I find it very interesting that the first person that we meet is not a character that we get to know.
She's the MacGuffin.
She's the MacGuffin.
She's the mystery box.
Instead of getting to know this woman, we get to know two men, namely.
Two men who are inadvertently trying to find and save this woman.
So let's start with the detective. He's a belter himself. He's got a fucked up spine thanks to some dodgy health.
Yeah, it was the bad bone density juice stuff, because that's another thing. They make sure to let you know that there's physical differences of being from space and being on Earth and being maybe from Mars at some point, I imagine. But this is a show where you can definitely tell that it's written by nerds who sat there and they said, well, you know, if you lived on a spaceship, your bones would be different.
Yeah, especially if you grew up there, your body would naturally do certain things or go in certain ways, and they address that, and they also address the idea of these people have a culture of their own, and they don't identify with being humans from Earth.
No,
they identify as belters.
And that's why Miller is an outsider, because he is from the belt, but he dresses like and he acts like he's not. And that puts him on the outside and makes him a point of contention for the people that he walks around barking at. He's a cop on top of that as well. Like, he's a filthy detective on top of that.
Also how he's gotten to that position, because the majority of the people on the belt are doing grunt work. They're stuck doing the manual labor, and he's escaped that somehow.
And Miller is, in this pilot, he comes across as the main character to me. He comes across as the guy that you're following, and he has his sidekick guy who's the point of view for the audience, but you get a clear understanding that guy, Havelock, I want to say his name is not the main character. He's just a guy that gets information told to him because he's us. We don't know what's happening.
It's very convenient for him to have a new partner and literally who's new to the station.
Literally, once the episode decides that we, the audience, are caught up, they stop having Havelock in the plot. They just say, you stay here. Because the audience understands enough now to watch the plot play out for the rest of the episode, which I laughed at a lot, actually. It was a clean and an efficient way to do it, but also a very calculated way to do that. I had a good chuckle.
It was like, poor dude, getting kicked out.
I don't give a shit about Havelock. Look, if he's a character that turns around and becomes a suddenly wonderful guy, I'll eat Miller's hat.
Oh, I would be a little surprised if he comes back at all.
Oh, he has to. They said his name. At least they have to kill him in another episode if that's going to be the case. You can't just leave that guy. But Miller, he's our detective. He's disgruntled. He's a grump. He's an outsider. What did you think, Miller? What did you think of him?
Dickhead interested to see what he gets up to. He seems like he screams, "I have a dead daughter" vibe.
Oh, okay.
Like, I used to be a good detective, and he
And then I lost it all.
yeah.
Now I don't care.
Asked if he has kids,
Yes.
and he says, "No, I missed the boat on that one."
Yeah.
And I'm like, you have some kind of tragic backstory. I'm not buying that you've always been this disgusting human being.
Did you find him a compelling character or no?
Not really.
Why not?
Too many tropes. Too many tropes.
He's a character that is the tropes. He's got the hat, he's got the partner, he seems like he's a cynic, but underneath it all, he's got a heart of gold, and he actually cares.
He's taking the bribes, but then he takes action.
He's a man of justice, even though he has this affable demeanor. I understand what you're saying, because I couldn't see past that for the longest period of time in this watching. I like Thomas Jane as an actor. I thought, he's doing the scenes, they're fine, I don't really care. But once it got to that moment at the end with the bird flying up in front of him, and he takes a moment to look at that and then see the little girl down there, and that set him off to show us that he actually has that heart of gold, that he actually does give a shit, and that the things that he has been pushing away actually do get to him. And so I was won over at that point. And since this is the beginning of a story, you have to work your way towards growing the character. So I understand it, but I am completely in agreement with you that even then with that bird touch, I just sat there going, okay, look, I like the actor. I like these tropes. I like detective characters. I like my noir guys. I really loved his line about why he wears a hat, to keep the rain off my head. I thought that was a very good line of dialogue. I really like that a lot, but I agree. He wasn't somebody that I wanted to watch a full show about yet. Not in this one.
No, but I can see that they're teeing up lots of things specifically with him as a character. And I'm like, I know that you'll move beyond this because I trust the vision of the show already. Like, it didn't do anything for me to worry that it's already gonna fuck it up.
Now, what would a rich girl do to really piss Daddy off on series?
Are you asking what I did? Bang every space fucker I could find.
It's not helpful.
I'm sorry, Mother. Did you come here for my help?
Admit it. Miss me. Miss these little chads.
Good night.
Other main man is Jim Holden, a name that I'm sure we'll remember. I'll probably just call him Holden all the time. I'm sure we won't call him Jim ever again, but Jim Holden is the other main man, and what did you think?
I liked him more than Miller because he's the gruff dude that is annoyed that he has a conscience.
And that he has desires for things better than himself?
Yeah, but also, like, he wants better, but he doesn't want to have to do more. And I hard relate to that.
I think he was the more defined character, yet we met him a while later.
He gives more protagonist vibes.
Yeah, I think he's the protagonist of the show, but in this episode, they really sidelined him for a very long time. I felt like we didn't get to really...
I feel like we're going to get multiple protagonists. So we're going to have the protagonist of the space stuff, the station stuff, the Earth stuff. That's, I think, and you're going to get the connections between them building up. But I connected more to him as a potential, like, main character that like everything else I think of as being connected and relating to him.
Yeah. He was fine. Look, he was fine. I like that
I thought he was hot.
He's hot. He's the guy from Sky High. He's War and Peace. And will I unsee that? No. No. To the very end, if we make it to the end of The Expanse, I'm going to keep mentioning that he's War and Peace. I'll mention it as that's the final thing I'll say on the pod. This show's lead was War and Peace from Sky High. He was fine. They gave him good character traits, but he himself, I found to be what you talked about with Miller, where I just see the elements of what the writers are putting of him as a character, but I am not relating to him myself. I can see why you do, and I hope to in the future. He actually reminds me of John Crichton from Farscape, where it's like, you are the perfect protagonist, man. You have these set of values that you can explore in a whole show. And I warmed up to Crichton after a few episodes. I hope to warm up to this guy, but at the moment, I'm just sitting here going, hey, he's fine. He's not offensive. He has morals. He pretends he doesn't. He fucks, which is good to know. The actor seems charming enough. I hope to warm to the dude, but at the moment, here's my biggest hurdle. Okay, here's what it is, and maybe this is me needing more of a tropey thing. He's supposed to be a blue-collar guy. He's supposed to be the rough and tumble. I've been working out on the belt for ages. I've been living on this ship, and I don't feel that at all. I feel like he's a handsome man who walked out of his trailer and he's been told that he's a spaceship man. Like, I do not believe this is a rough and tumble guy that has been living out there.
See, I was thinking that, but I was thinking it in a different way. We already have two other examples of rich, privileged people walking away from their privilege to be with the have-nots. So I wonder if he's going to be another example of that, maybe?
Or the inverse of, like, he's like, no, I don't want to be with the have-nots. I want to be out and better than this. But that doesn't seem to be the case with him thus far.
No.
He just has that, I'm a pretty boy. That's my problem. I want to be a not.
Oh, like,
and I don't mean that aesthetically.
I had a problem with Crichton being generic handsome man. He's your generic handsome man.
And I don't mean that on the visual look of the actor. I mean that the character is like, hello, I am handsome lead character man, and you will follow me because that's what dictates stories. That's what a story follows. Me, guy. What I'm saying is, he should be Dave Lister from Red Dwarf. That's my main character that I would want. No, he's just there. I mean, I'm wondering how he is going to factor into this grander story, because at the moment he's just some schmuck who stumbled across something that we don't understand, and I wonder how they're going to spiral that out to be something that continues on, because with the detective, I understand how they can do that. He's literally an authority figure who is pulling at something bigger than himself, and you can go into that, and you can imagine all of the things that you can play off of with him, but I'm not too sure with Holden. He's just some schmuck. The most he has going for him is he has a girlfriend that has morals outwardly, and then she dies at the end, and it's like, oh, okay, how's he going to deal with that maybe? Was there a particular moment or scene for you that helped you warm to this guy? Because I couldn't find one right now. It was just, they had lines of dialogue. I'm like, oh, that's insightful. But what did you think?
No, I liked his little bits of banter with everybody.
Those are the two main that we get here. I'm keen to explore the other characters that will be introduced or have been but just aren't really present here, because there's a whole crew of people that he is stuck with at the end, and I don't know any of their names. I don't know how I could even describe them to you. There's a British lady. There's a guy. There's a guy with a beanie
with
on.
Miller as well, and we didn't even mention her.
What lady? Oh, the other cop lady? Yeah. And so there's characters that haven't made themselves too known to us yet, but I'm sure they'll be rich and endearing. And then we have the Deputy Secretary General of the UN, who we'll get to, but here she's only in 2 scenes, and they're memorable scenes, but I don't have enough to say what I think of her as a character, more that is the tone of the show comes through. And that's what I just want to touch on, the feeling of this. How do you feel about the show overall? Like, are you excited to watch more? And how are you when it comes to the grit of this? Because this is a grittier show. Like, this has a, like, we're dark and broody.
Oh, do you mean, is that turning me off the show?
How do you feel about it?
Ambivalent. I was not engaged, but I wasn't actively put off by the pilot, which makes it have a huge leg up from Space Above and Beyond. In my books. I just don't care. That's where I'm at. I'm not invested after this pilot. Because I'm just like, I'm like, okay, you're setting up all of these things. Great. If I was reading a novel series, yeah, I would be more interested to see where it goes. Would be in it for the long haul. And maybe a bit more than when I'm presented with that in a TV show. But I'm like, well, Ryan locked us in to watch it. And everybody says that it's great. So once I've settled into the world and I give a shit about the characters, I think I'll like it a lot more. But if I just watch the pilot on my own, I would not attentively watch the rest of the show.
I am drawn into the world because of the production rather than the writing and the characters. I like the look of it. I do like the feel of it. I appreciate the feel. It has a very lived-in, grounded sensibility. It makes sense. I'm sitting there going, this makes sense to me. I can see how logic. This could be our future.
I appreciate that
I could see how this could play out, and they aren't undermining it with some random goofy thing in there. But I am in, again, we're on the same page here, where I, through just a singular one, am not drooling to watch the next episode right away. And that's just a given, I think, with a lot of pilot episodes of sci-fi shows and or first seasons of a science fiction show. They're finding their groove, they're finding their rhythm, and also this is from an era of television where it's the long game being played, where you can look at an episode and you don't say that, oh, I loved it, but you can say, I appreciated what it's doing for the grander game being played here. And that's very much what this is giving me. It is one where it will be important later, but just sitting down to talk about it even isn't the most thrilling thing in itself, but I am thrilled by the pieces it's put down. The relationship between a good pilot versus that of a good episode is always the tug of war, because there is a difference between a pilot episode and just a regular episode. A pilot has to tell us why we should watch this, what's important about this show, and how it works. And a regular episode is just bringing you in on an adventure.
Moving it forward a little bit.
And why this stands out to me in comparison to the other pilots that we've had to watch for this series, for our podcast, is it does both. It does both, where it begins with all of the typical things. Here's the world. Here's a monologue. Here's another monologue. Here's a visual thing to tell us. But in the last 15 minutes or so, when they finally haul on over to this freighter, I was engaged because it was an actual plot happening. Like, this is an episode of a television show where they find the spooky ship and they're exploring it, and oh no, it's set off a beacon and we have to worry about pirates and being attacked, and all of this was happening.
There's a specific problem because the first chunk is setting up the problems of the world, not the problems that our characters are going to face and the direct things that they're going to need to do to try and overcome those. Once we get to the freighter, we get that specific kind of problem.
And I want to know how our characters overcome problems. I want to know their style and why they're different to one another. Once we get into the back part of this, the plots really kick into gear. We get to see how Miller works as a character and how he operates, and same with this crew that Holden is in charge of. And I was really buzzed by that. So this is very much a you have to eat your vegetables too episode, where the vegetables aren't bad in themselves, but I just want that steak.
It's a transmitter.
This must be the beacon that called us. Somebody planted it.
Pirate bait. McDowell was right.
One of the things actually that I want to highly praise, I think that this helps kick it over into something more than just a okay pilot, is the Julie Mao case at the center of it all. I am a sucker for this type of storytelling, where I joke before about mystery box stuff. I'm not a big fan of mystery boxes, but I am a big fan of a linchpin. This is a linchpin event where this person who has been either kidnapped or she's been taken elsewhere, whatever her case is, we, the audience, aren't aware of it yet, and nor are the characters. But all of these characters, all of these different factions, all of these different groups, all of these different entities are all converging because of this one person. And I like that. And when I get told, now that's the pitch, okay? You have been told that the universe is on the edge of a war, and this girl going missing could be the spark that lights that. Damn, I'm in.
Yeah.
That's what makes me get in. What do you think about the Julie Mao thing being the thing that is planted here in the middle?
Yeah. Okay, for me, rather than being a linchpin, which I understand it is what it is meant to be, for me, it felt more like a seed that they've planted deep down, and that's going to continue to grow as the season goes on. So it didn't get me as invested because I'm like, that's going to pay off more and more later.
I just got into it because Miller's been handed the case, and he has no connection in this episode. He has no connection to Holden. Holden has no connection to what's happening on Earth.
Call him Jim, please.
Please, Jimmy. Jimmy has no connection to Miller. And they exist as characters in the world, and we understand how they work in this universe, but I wanted to know, okay, why are we doing this? What's the purpose? And so once they introduced that the freighter that we saw in the very beginning is this thing giving out a distress call, and that's what brings Holden in, I like how that is dispensed in terms of making the characters go on the same journey, but for completely different reasons, completely different motivations, and ones that suit their characters. Miller is a guy he's got to solve the case. I've got some dark void in my heart that I need to fill by doing the case, and I'm going to pretend I don't give a shit. And then you have Holden, who is a guy that is very similar but different, where he wants to give the illusion that he doesn't care, but deep down, he also cares. And so he goes to this ship, but they do it differently. One's a detective and one's just a scrap guy. Like, I'm just going to board this thing and hopefully we'll do the best we can.
Yes, but both of them have their little corners that have been neglected by the rest of the world.
That is a great way to put it. What do you think about Julie Mao finding a room with what appears to be an engine in the center of it, like the core of the ship, and there's a growling monster sound and something that appears to be eating a person or at least dragging them in a CG thing. Thoughts on that? I'm scared personally. I don't know what we're getting from that, and I'm scared of it.
I'm just like, what the fuck is that? Hope I get answers.
You are the optimist out of the two of us, because I look at that and I've just been traumatized by so many bad mystery box spooky ooze in TV that I look at that and I go,
I'm not hopeful at
no.
what the answers are going to be. I don't know if it's going to be satisfying, but I'm like, any answers? Do you think any answers will be okay? Then it's not a true mystery box.
Is this a show where you would accept monsters being in it, like aliens or ghouls or monsters? Would you?
Yeah.
Okay, difference of opinion. Not me. With what we've been given thus far, I'm very much of the opinion of this is a show where it's people versus people. People having a go at one another.
Well, okay. I don't think it's gonna end up being true aliens. That's my sci-fi theory after this one episode, based on basically nothing, is that it's going to be some human creation that's gone wrong.
That's what I think.
That's gone rogue. Not vogue.
Miller and Holden plots that are building up the story for the season ahead.
Mm-hmm. And they'll eventually converge is the feeling.
Wouldn't it be bold if they didn't?
It would be bold.
Until the final episode, they finally meet and they're like, hey, who are you? And then that's how we end the season. But one thing that is very separate, very, very distant, and I loved it the most, hence we've left it towards the very end, is Earth. I was sitting there going, where's Earth? I want to know what's
Luna.
Earth and Luna. I want to know what Earth is up to. I want to know what they're up to, because Earth is the big baddies, it seems. They're the top dogs. They're the ones with the water, the power.
Corruptors. Oh, fuck.
They're water and power from Tank Girl. I kept thinking about that. Every time they mentioned that water was more valuable than gold, I kept thinking of Tank Girl. I kept thinking of Tank Girl.
Like that glorious shot of like the 2 drops of water in space with Julie. Great. That was great.
That was a great piece of business. But Earth, it's in 2 scenes, basically.
And you loved it.
Brian George is in this episode. I love Brian George. He's one of my favorite characters.
Was here too.
Yeah. We didn't talk about that.
He went crazy about plants, whatever the fuck that's
Mike
about.
from Breaking Bad was in this, and he went crazy.
You said
space
he had
mad.
no connection to Jimmy.
He had no, so that's a Better Call Saul reference. I got you. No, there's guests. There's also that guy, the air filter guy. That character actor's in everything. He was in Cube. He was in Supernatural. I think he was Death in Supernatural. But he's a character actor that's in a bunch. So I'm also secure in wanting to watch more of The Expanse because they have wonderful, weird actors show up in it. And I want to see more.
Casting is great. Not just in terms of those character actors that we are more familiar with, but the actors that they've gotten to play the extras of the Belters and how they've gone a little bit like they're detail orientated when it comes to the set dressing, but also to the extras. So
they've chosen weird looking people.
Yes.
They've chosen people who are strange and people who you can't take your eye away from them, and just give them funky costumes on top of that, and it's even better.
You're not typical.
Yes, you're not somebody that you would typically see as an extra in
the fact that they don't blend in
makes
is
it
the
even
point.
better. Yeah. But Earth is, man, what a place to be. The waters are risen up. They've walled off cities. They've walled off.
Elevated the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, and they've put a wall around it. I really like that. Like, the logic there is, we'll try and save the Statue of Liberty. We'll build a little wall around it. It's like, you idiots. It really is one of those.
It needs to stay on that island, right?
Look,
it needs to
we can't
stay on the
we
island.
can't solve global warming, but we can at least save the Statue of Liberty. We can go to space, but we can't solve this. It's but we meet. Well, we actually saw her. I forget her name.
Some footage.
I forget her name. It was mainly told through text, so I don't know her name right now. I'm sure the next episode somebody will say it, and I'll be like, that's it. But we met her on a TV screen originally, but then when we saw her proper, she's in her house and she's looking in the mirror. She's getting all ready to go. She's got a real contemplation on her face. But then this little kid throws a water balloon at her, and I thought that there was another moment where The Expanse stood out, especially for being a pilot, where it was another piece of visual storytelling where we have been told water is this valuable commodity. People are dying and need water, and yet when we come back to Earth, they are just using it for anything. This kid's throwing around his water balloons, and she's just reacting like, oh, you silly thing. And if that happened on the belt, it would be the most insane thing. That would not be happening at all.
How much inequality there is between this woman and
the society she's a part of.
Yeah, and the fact that I do get the feeling that the closer you are to Earth, the more power and prestige you have. Like, being a true Earther has more power and privilege than being a Marzi.
I think they call them dusters. I heard dusters said once, and I said, if that's a person from Mars, I'm in.
I wanted to do the B5 reference.
A Marzi from Mars, yeah.
And then the Belters.
That's all we are to the Earthers and Dusters.
She is a woman of power in terms of actual position, but also she is an inhabitant of Earth, which is the top dog, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
They have water up the wazoo, and they're just throwing it around, just playing with it.
They got so much that they can waste it.
They got so much they can waste it. And I found it really sweet how she was with this grandchild. And so, did you have any idea of what this woman was going to be like? Because this is how they introduce her, as the sweet grandmother figure. Oh, you, and she's tickling him, and she's talking to Brian George about this is the power of what it's like to be a grandmother, and she has this mournful look of, I've been called to my job, but I've got to go. Did you have any kind of notions of what we're going to get with this bitch?
Yes, I did. And a part of that is context. Because we watched a particular episode of Babylon 5 today. And Mr. JMS himself loves a hard cut transition where the characters are saying one thing and it's revealed to be another, or usually the opposite, making the previous point ironic.
That is true. He loves doing that.
He fucking loves it.
You know what else loves doing that, by the way? The Sopranos. That show loves doing it too.
It's a classic. It's a classic. And it gave me the waft of that. It's like, this is too sweet.
This show's not sweet. It doesn't have sweetness in it.
Sweet.
It must be undercut immediately.
Yep. I'm like, what are they going to be doing? And they're like, we need to talk. We need to talk. Okay, how much torture are we going to see in this next scene? Not very graphic.
But the implication.
Visceral.
What's being implied here, what's being told to us is one of those where you go,
they're destroying that man, keeping him propped up on a wall under Earth's gravity.
You tried to harm Earth. Now, let it hurt you back, bitch. I had a feeling that she was not on the level because, and this is part of casting, she has a villainous voice.
Yes.
She has a sexy voice, but she has a very deep, presence in her voice. So she's an actress that's been in everything. We watched her in Star Trek Beyond, in fact, and she was a good person in that. But she just has this voice that says, I'm going to fuck you up. And so that scene where she's talking to this man that they've captured, this terrorist who's from an organization that I don't think we understand yet. They just said the initials of it, but I don't know who's that in relationship to. But I loved that scene because it is the show to me where she's putting on this face of the grandmother to this guy, of sweet talking, oh, please tell me the information. It would be so great if you could do that. A whisper, if that's all you can manage, I'll understand. And then the guy clenches his fist in defiance, and she sees that and then just turns heel on him and just walks off. Leave him there for another 10 hours, and if he's still alive, call me. And she's just off, doesn't give a shit. It's this performative aspect to the character where we talked about Miller, we talked about Holden, and how we think about them, and they have way more screen time. They have way more stuff given to them, and yet I understood her way more. And I want to watch more of this character. I want to see her wheel and deal and operate, and I want to see how she dictates the story going forward. She is in 2 scenes. She's in 2 scenes, but they're very effective. They are very clear in what they're doing, and it is the type of thing that is, the only word to describe what it is delightful. This is a delightful character, one that I have a smile on my face when I see her because she's delightfully a bitch, and I can't wait to see her again. Now, did you have any strong feelings towards her? Because she's only in these 2 scenes, but she is, at least in this moment, the villain of the show. She's at least the villainous presence. What did you think of her and that moment with the interrogation?
Yeah, I was just like, you are a believable kind of villain. And I really appreciate this because could have gone too far. You didn't go to RoboCop, and I appreciate that about you, show.
She's the most exciting thing in the pilot. The actor is clearly better than everyone else.
Yeah,
isn't that
leagues above? Knows it, feels it, like, as the character.
Isn't that so important?
So important.
It's so important. And I joke before
like
about Gilmore Girls.
Other ones will get there, but
it's not to say that everyone else is. I mean, Thomas Jane is a very skilled, capable actor. Yeah. He's a reliable actor. I love Thomas Jane, but
he's just not fully there yet.
She's just one of those where, man, she's got it. And I joked before about Gilmore Girls, but let's be honest, the Gilmore Girls pilot is very solid. Everyone's given a good performance, but the parents are clearly the best, and not only because they're fun, but those actors are leagues above everyone else. And that happens with Babylon 5 as well, where we had Peter Jurasik as Londo, where he was just leagues above everyone else. He nailed it from pretty much the beginning. He's still finding his feet, but he clearly had an idea. And this particular performance here is one where you go, oh yeah, I want to watch 6 seasons of that. I want to watch Jim Holden. I'm not too sure yet. Miller, I could go one way or the other, but this person,
I want her to be in the whole show.
Yeah, I
want her locked in.
This is one where you would definitely say, oh, she wasn't in this episode, and that's a bad thing. I don't think I would say that about Jim Holden or Miller. It's like, if an episode didn't have them, at the moment, I'm not going to weep over that. This lady, 2 scenes, I'm already crying the fact that there wasn't 3.
A whisper will do, if that's all you can manage. Hey. Give him another 10 hours. If he survives, call me.
Mars is also a presence, and they only show up at the end as a stealth ship, as a force that is there to destroy. They nuke Jim's girlfriend. They nuked her. She had something to say. What do you think she had to say?
It was, I have something important to tell you, and then gets cut off. And I think that's the that's the single line that made me the most interested in moving forward.
What do you think? What do you think she had to tell him? What do you think was the most important thing?
I think obvious one is that she was pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty standard.
No, I love you.
I love you. I know the truth about you, or you should know this thing about me.
Wouldn't it be really funny if she said, I'm cheating on you, and then she just noped out? Like, that would be
great.
That would be a boss move.
I've already put in for my transfer
that
we were discussing earlier.
Or you have a small pee-pee. Bye-bye.
I need to be honest.
I would really like it if she did just a slam of him. She grabbed out a microphone and a spotlight came down and she started dragging on a cigarette and she just does like a full comedy set about how much he sucks.
I just thought of another one that's a contender because there's so many different things that you could do with that setup. I know it was you.
Oh, yeah? I know it was you. For what, though?
Oh, reporting the thing to HR.
Oh, yes, I know it was you. And also, we fucked in 0G, baby. Hey, would you want to have sex in 0G? Is that something you'd want to do? I feel like there's a lot of factors to really contend with. I feel like motion sickness would happen.
But they're so used to going through it, it's non-event. So for me, that scene didn't read as we're going into 0G, so we're gonna fuck to make the most of it. This is a time where we can have sex, and 0G isn't gonna stop us from having sex.
Maybe they started, and then 0G happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started floating up, and then they smacked down on the ground.
Yeah.
That would have broken his dick. Sorry. Am I wrong? That would have hurt.
It seemed like it would hurt hips more than the dick, because the dick.
But she's on top of him.
Very much seemed like it was still inside of her, so it's cushioned. It's contained.
I think you overestimate how cushy the vagina is for the penis.
See, I think it would do more damage to the balls than to the dick.
I think you could argue it could do a lot of damage to the puss.
Yeah.
But you're not arguing that, so I'm sorry.
No.
The puss is out of the equation. On our scale of yum being bad and yum yum being good, what would you rate this? Because that's what we do here on Yum Yum Podcast. We hail...
Yum.
Wow, a yum. Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's a yum.
Yum.
There's room to grow. At least there's that. There's stuff here that I say, okay, I could see this being more of a show, but this isn't winning me over straight away. I can't wait to see if it will and see how, but at the moment, it's just okay. It's just fine. Rachel, could you please inform us all the title of the next episode? We'll just be reading the title and maybe have a little guess at what could be in store for us. Because I don't know, nor do you, and we don't want to be spoiled. This is our first time watching The Expanse.
I am going to give you a little spoiler, though.
No, don't. I asked you not to.
It's just for the thumbnail that IMDb has for this episode.
Is it of my favorite character?
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's good to know. I'm glad she's back.
Mm-hmm. The Big Empty is the title.
What do you think could happen?
I think it's going to have to do with water.
Oh, some crisis with water?
Yep.
I think we're going to have an episode, if we're going to be logical, I think we're going to have an episode where we're going to follow up on that interrogation with the terrorist guy, learn more about that, and Holden is going to be stuck in space. And he's going to have to figure out how to survive and probably deal with the Martian stealth ship.
Yes.
That would make sense.
Okay.
And I guess Miller is still on the case.
I also wonder if they're going to hatch a specific plan. Like Holden and his crew, like if they're going to be content to just go back to Earth, or, well...
To the belt.
To the belt. And just find a new ship and get a new commission from the corporation.
I don't know. I haven't thought about that far. I think mainly this is going to be an episode where you're going to have a survival episode. Or how are we going to... Because this show loves that already. You can tell they have like mouth guards that they put in when they're flying and they're injecting themselves
details.
And imagine a whole episode where it's like, oh no, our ship has lost gravitational pull, and oh no, the nacelle has fallen off, and oh, Miller's hat blew away, and now he has to go chase it. And that's, as they say in Miller's Crossing, weirdly enough, there's nothing more embarrassing than a man chasing his own hat. But that is all we have for you when it comes to us exploring The Expanse. We're finding our footing when it comes to the series. We're finding our way to really dig into it. So I hope you've enjoyed what we've discussed thus far. If you want to hear more of us, you can follow us on whatever podcast hosting site allows you to do so, including YouTube even. We put this out for our patrons first on Patreon, so if you're listening to this on the main feed, you should come over to Yum Yum Podcast on Patreon and support us there, where you will have a whole bounty of content, so much you won't even know what to do with it. You might put it in some balloons and throw it at your grandmother because it's just so abundant, but you can hear so much of our discussion on The Expanse over there. Be a part of our group Discord. All of the good stuff is in the description of this episode down below, as well as our email address, which is yumyumpod@gmail.com. Rate and review the show. Share us around. Share us with all your friends. You can say, hey, friend, these two Australians, this husband and wife team, they're watching The Expanse for the first time. And this one of them, oh, you won't believe what they thought The Expanse was. You won't even believe when they thought it was made. Oh boy. But that is all we have. Thank you so much for listening. Rachel, a real joy talking to you. A real joy getting into this. But I'm really sad that no character in this episode said yum yum. A tear is forming in my eye about it.
See you then. Well, voila.